This is the story of
Stephen Sarro from Unteachers.
the happiest man in the world.
I'm interjecting. My opinion matters. And you're listening to Discography Discussion.
Don't go anywhere.
Dude, you did not tell me you were going to do that. I tend to describe music in really oddball ways, and so it's hard sometimes to like put that into the podcast like in a way where people are going to understand.
Right, yeah.
And if you describe music in very oddball ways, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe, that is Dan, this is Stephen Sarro of Unteachers and Tantrum of the Muse, and we're talking about Paramaecium. We've gone doom metal, ladies and gentlemen.
We have. We don't go doom metal nearly enough on this show.
Hey, if you just say Jeff, do you think that people will notice the voice difference?
I mean,
yeah,
we could try, but I'm not sure it would be successful.
I know one guy that would notice.
Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd feel like, what the fuck, guys?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So, Paramaecium. Paramaecium is a doom metal band from Australia. You may know them as the band that Jason Sherlock joined whenever he was done with Mortification.
He had left Mortification before Post-Momentary Affliction actually hit the shelves. So
Okay.
yeah, 93-ish.
So that interview where Steve Rose like, yeah, and then Jason went off and did different music. He was talking about Paramaecium.
He is, yeah.
Okay.
There were other things in there, but Paramaecium is like the main thing people would know, for
Gotcha.
sure.
So my own personal history with the band is that I didn't even know they existed or were a thing until, I guess, about 2003.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, and my dad and we actually went to this flea market in our local area. It's unfortunately no longer there anymore, but there were these two dudes that were like stoned completely out of their minds that used to sell metal CDs at the flea market.
Right.
I saw this CD that had like a gravestone on it, you know, like an angel weeping or whatever, and it said Paramaecium exhumed of the earth on it. And I remember being kind of weirded out by it because like at that time I was kind of like a hardcore kid, you know. I liked death metal, but it wasn't like my go-to thing. And I was intrigued by this because I opened it up and like there were like, you know, a few references to like Christianity and like the Bible stuff in it, and that was what I was really into at the time. And so I really I was like, okay, cool, well I'll get this. And I remember at first the guy didn't want to sell it to me because he was like, oh, I heard a little bit off of this, and I kind of want to listen to it for myself before I buy it, before I sell it. And I was like, well, you put it on the seller table, so
A true capitalist at work, ladies and gentlemen.
You put a $4 price tag on it. So
yeah.
I bought it for like $4 at the flea market. And then a really weird change of behavior when we were leaving, my dad was like, let's pop it in, see what it sounds like.
Your dad?
Yeah, because I guess he was curious as well.
Wow.
And he, so we put it in, and he appreciated that, the first few riffs were like really heavy and slow, and he said that it sounded like Black Sabbath.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and, there was the operatic singing at the beginning of this first song, which is called The Unnatural Conception. It's just like a 17-minute song. I remember I was just like trying to get over, like, because this is weird, because I'd never really heard anything like this before. And I wouldn't really even say that I knew what doom metal really was that year, like, It was a different thing for me. And so I remember my dad was like, he really liked the operatic singing or whatever. But then whenever the actual vocals for the band kicked in, which was just like a guttural death metal growl.
Your dad must have loved it.
Yeah, I think he listened to the first song, which, credit to him that was 17 minutes.
I was going to say, the first song is like half the album, right?
Yeah, so that's probably like the most death metal he's ever heard in his whole life, And
is your dad a metal fan, or like in context of like what your dad would be into? Because my dad would absolutely hate every second of that album.
Well, the weird thing about my dad is that because so we grew up really religious. I think that's something we've talked about on the podcast before, but like we grew up Pentecostal, and so like that kind of like heavy music and stuff wasn't like allowed. Like you weren't allowed to listen to heavy music.
Yeah, that's how it was for me too.
I remember being a kid and going through my dad's old records, because you're a kid and you're bored, and if it's raining one day, you're not going outside, you're looking through the house for stuff, and I found a bunch of records that were his from back, in the day, and it was like Black Sabbath, Paranoid, and
man, that's awesome.
Yeah, like Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and some Led Zeppelin records, some Cream records, and stuff that I
wish
thought
my dad had that stuff.
Yeah, and so that stuff that I thought sounded really cool. He had a lot of Styx records and stuff. And I remember him handing me that Black Sabbath one, Paranoid, and being like, "You can listen to this, but don't do it when your mom's around."
Yeah.
One of those things. And so I did. I respected his wishes, and I still have a lot of those records actually at home. My dad had kind of a little bit of a metal base. I mean, it's obvious that he was around when metal became a thing. And so with stuff like Sabbath, you have these slow, kind of slower paced songs that are just more focused on being heavy. I think with Sabbath it was heavy blues, So I think he heard that in Paramaecium, being a doom band, He's like, I don't really like the singing on it. He goes, but this is pretty good. I mean, how often do you buy a record randomly and, one of your parents listens to it and says that, that it's pretty good. That's
right.
Pretty high praise coming from someone that, really doesn't understand death metal or, anything like that. So,
I mean, he called it singing. That's the first sign of him not realizing.
Right, for sure. So, he wasn't into that, but I was.
I think the Sabbath connection is just that Sabbath was the one band that, I know Tony Iommi had the finger missing thing. I had to learn to play differently and kind of invented that power chord that's become synonymous with sludge and doom. And I think it's just any band that's got that guitar edge to it, immediately just people go, it's a Sabbath-y heavy.
Right. Well, and Paramaecium was interesting too because it didn't take me very long looking through the booklet that came with the CD that there's the Mortification connection with Jason Sherlock, and I knew that name, and it's oh, this is the guy that played drums on Scrolls of the Megaloth, and so that was a really big deal for me, and and on this record, he really killed it, because this was I wasn't totally on board with how slow it was because as a hardcore kid it's all about fast tempos and in your face on the mic stuff, but I guess what really kept me listening to Paramaecium was the vocals, because their singer Andrew Tompkins is his vocals are so extreme, and if you look at the year this came out, this was 1993. Which, at the time you had death metal bands that had extreme vocals, but I always felt some of these Christian metal bands from that time period always had the most extreme vocals. Just outrageous. There's a song on here called Injudicial, which is it's the second track on Exhumed to the Earth, and it's kind of a faster tempo song.
Their version of fast, it's still really slow, but it's fastest.
It gave me the impression that if this band sped up, they could kill you if they wanted to,
Yeah, that's one of the best things they've ever done. I love that song.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the heaviest songs I've ever heard.
Yeah, it is heavy for sure.
This 105-minute monster of a CD. To be perfectly honest with you, I love it, but I also kind of find it boring. Because especially on this first record, I enjoy the heaviness of it. I enjoy how crushing it is. I enjoy, the way the guitar tone sounds. Jason Sherlock's drumming is the most controlled I've ever heard him do, because this is a guy that's more or less known for just blasting it out, Yeah,
I mean, the thing about that, he's always been known for his footwork, his double bass footwork has always been so clean, and I always was under the impression of if you're faster and you have really good clean footwork, that means you're better. That's harder and that's better.
Right.
But I think now understanding music a little more at the age I am now, I think there's something to be said about the fact that he was able to keep that clean drumming with something that was so down tempo. Like there's moments on Exhumed where he does some double bass work where it's actually like almost so slow that he's still doing double bass, but it's the tempo so slow where you almost have. It's almost, to me, it seems almost harder to. It's almost like if you can imagine like doing like practicing on a snare drum and you're just doing like a drum roll like dun, 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 dun. If you do that for like 5 straight minutes, you might like start swaying on your tempos. You know what I mean? You might speed it up or you might slow it down. He just has this perfect timing that's so clean, and yet he still does those double bass piece things. Like his drumming's night and day from the other drummers that they've used. That's just one of the main things I loved about Paramaecium was just his drumming. It still sounds like Jason Sherlock, and that drumming cleanness of his feet, that whether he's blasting or whether he's not, he still has a vibe. You can just tell it's him. You know what I mean?
It requires a level of control that I think a lot of metal drummers don't have.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that was interesting to hear from him. But actually, my favorite thing about Exhumed overall is the guitar tone.
Me too.
And like, because it's not like overly depressing, like, because there's a lot of doom bands where it's like they're just haunting you with the atmosphere, whereas this was just brutal in its own way. Like, it's hard to describe music this slow as brutal, but like it's one of those things where you almost have to hear it, which, I mean, if you're listening to this episode, you are hearing it, but like it's really interesting to me, like how they were able to maintain it through 105 minutes. But at the same time, that is also why I find the record to be a little bit boring, because like if you look at the first track, it's like 17 minutes, but like the first 8 minutes or so, it's just them playing the same shit over and over and over again. And
yeah.
And again, it's not that it's not enjoyable to hear, but like to have that much of it, to me, the record didn't really start getting that interesting until like the last track, because at that point they'd just been doing the same thing for, an hour, or 55 minutes or whatever. And that's hard to get through even now. Like, I mean, I listened to it this week, but like the last song, Removed from the Grave, is like, that's a really interesting song to me because it starts off with like some melodic guitar work and like, there's different, more interesting parts to it. And
right.
And that's the thing that I like the most about Paramaecium, whereas I think Exhumed was kind of more of a proof of concept for the band. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't say it's a demo, because I mean, it is, in every sense of the word, it is a doom metal masterpiece, but like it's kind of like you're just getting the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah. And if you love that, then that's great. But like for me, it wasn't enough to keep me like that interested in the band. So like I went off of the band for a couple of years after that, because I was like, oh, that's a cool, interesting thing that I bought for $4,
Yeah, the thing about doom metal is like, even in like a secular market, it's really not like a major genre, and there's tons of bands that do that genre, but it's not like, it's never become a thing where it's become, it's super big and like I think Neurosis might be the closest thing to like a massive sized band that does doom type stuff. And in the Christian market especially, I mean, that's a scarce list right there. I know that there's a lot of bands that maybe haven't hit like a major successful record deal, like where everyone, like a Tooth and Nail type of thing, where I think Warlord was the closest thing to doom metal that was and all of the stuff I've ever heard really is coming from more of a punk edge than an actual like neo folk kind of gothic metal side, like My Dying Bride or something like that, and so Paramaecium's like a weird band all on its own, because it's first of all, it's a band that was marketed as a Christian band, and I guess lyrically really kind of was a Christian band, but in a market that, even on the secular side, really wasn't a big, huge market. You know what I mean? And so that genre was just so scarce, and especially for Christian music. And like I said, I don't know. I've always been a fan of the down-tuned doom, sludge, whatever. It's always been front and center with my own guitar work and stuff, but I've never known that genre to be like well, like a lot of people doing it or whatever. Like I said, Neurosis and Warlord and things like that, of High on Fire, things like that have been more of my idea of like the Sabbath of now kind of doom stuff. Paramaecium is almost like a death metal band that's ridiculously slow. So they're all weird mix, man.
I used to joke with people and say that like, they're like, what does Paramaecium sound like? And I would be like, well, it's like if you took Scrolls of the Megaloth and played it at like 1/4 the speed.
I always, like, back when they first came out, like, I was a fan of Jason Sherlock already from Mortification, and I loved Scrolls of the Megaloth. And I had gone to Creation Festival in '93, and I was just like my story on Vengeance, where I was there in '92, and I was buying all the cassettes of like Scrolls and Vengeance, the released album and all that. Same thing this year. I was going there again. I was buying whatever was coming out, and I remember Post Momentary Affliction. I can't remember if it was out or it was just coming out. But the guy at the record booth was saying, yeah, Jason Sherlock just quit that band, and now he's doing this band called Paramaecium. I remember being like, what? Oh, I was like so bummed out because I loved Jason Sherlock. And so I was like, immediately I took that as a negative, like, oh, he's not in Mortification anymore. And then, so my beginning...
It was a negative.
Do you think so? Really?
Well, then he left Mortification.
Oh, yeah, that was definitely a negative for Mortification,
yeah.
For sure. yeah, definitely. But that was my very first time ever hearing of Paramaecium. And then it all just sort of happened at the same time, whereas like I came home and we have a Christian radio station out here called WJTL, and there was an old Christian metal show called Thunder Zone back in the day, and it just so happened that Exhumed was coming out, and they played Judicial or Judas, however you said it, which I don't know which way to pronounce that. I always called it Judicial, but anyway, that was like the single. And I think it was like the only song that was under 5-6 minutes.
Yeah, it's a shorter one.
So that made it the single, But I remember thinking like, okay, like I get that this is good, but like back then in '93 or whatever, I was not prepared for the slowness and the. I remember hearing people saying that like people would come to a Paramaecium show and they would just bring a chair with them. Like they would actually sit down and watch them.
Not a bad idea.
It wasn't like you were in a mosh pit, and that part of the band kind of went over my head a little bit back then because I was more into the speed and the blast beats. But I grew into them more and more as I got a little older, and Exhumed is an album where I can go back now and actually appreciate it more now than then. Whereas interesting because you started later, you got into them after the fact. I'm surprised that you find it as boring as you do.
Well, it is boring. I mean, not to argue, but like it's boring in the sense that like some of these songs that go on for like 10 minutes, it's like, are they interesting enough to warrant 10 minutes? Like some of them aren't, like especially the title track. I mean, I pick on that one a lot, but like it goes on forever, and a lot of it is just the same. And I understand like that you're creating an atmosphere and that you're like showcasing like what the band is about. Like I understand all that, like philosophically, like that this is what they were doing. I have no issue getting behind what they were doing, but at the same time, like as a music fan, I'm kind of like, okay, this is cool, but like this is it. Like this is it for the next hour. And it's not really like that. Like at the end, they switch it up quite a bit, and it's interesting, to hear kind of almost a more medieval sound, because like I don't think that they were really gothic nu metal at this point. Yeah. They were definitely still more like you said, it was like a death metal band, but it was tremendously slow.
Well, like the Unnatural Conceptions, the first song on the album, it's 17 minutes long, as you mentioned. That song to me doesn't get boring. And that's the longest song. And that one to me evolves, and it's building something, and the riff that's kind of playing is kind of a really tough riff that just sort of like it gets ingrained in your head, and then it kind of starts. They start adding a couple notes to it, and to me, it's evolving into something big, and then it goes into different territories, but it comes back sort of at the end. You're almost like, how many songs in are we? And then it goes back to a sort of the riff that was in the beginning of the song. And you're like, oh wait, this is the same track, and it actually sounds like a couple different songs. And so I actually would make the argument that Exhumed has really long. Every record has songs that are really long in some way, but the difference with Exhumed for me is that there's no point where I go like, is this song still playing? Like, what are they doing? Like, you know what I mean? And I know you're saying you kind of get that vibe from it, but for me, and with the 17-minute song, which is, like I said, the first song on the album, and there's a couple 10-minute songs on that, but the 17-minute one is one of the most interesting ones for me. And so I find it like, and there might be a couple where then
Voyage of the Severed and Hemorrhage of Hatred are two songs that I have a lot of trouble getting through.
I'll be honest with you. As much as I love that there's this band called Paramaecium, this doom metal band that has a Christian marketed band. It's got this death metal, one of the best death metal vocals I've ever heard.
Absolutely.
I would have to say that every single record they've done, there are some things I would have changed. And with Exhumed, it's definitely my favorite of their albums, of their full lengths, and it's definitely the one that got the closest to what I kind of would think. What makes Paramaecium great to me is stuff like Injudicial, where it's like, it's just sludgy, it's doomy, but it kind of just kicks you hard. It's so heavy, and his vocals are just completely insane, and it just, like, when they get into the folkier side of the band and the girly sort of operatic vocals and stuff, that stuff to me is great when you do a song like that. But when you mix it up, to me, I kind of wish Paramaecium, and I know I might be jumping ahead a little bit here, but I kind of wish Paramaecium would just do like 40 minutes of that heavy kind of stuff.
Well, they did that. It's Exhumed to the Earth.
Exhumed to the Earth is definitely the closest, where I think it's consistently heavy and death metal growly and all that kind of stuff. And I would say even the Silent Carnage demo, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the demo.
Yeah, I am. I had it for a couple of years.
It's definitely some of my favorite stuff, because it's just balls to the walls heavy.
Well, they were more death metal on that.
And it's still got that sludgy tone of that first album, though. Like it, and I know the Repentance EP is kind of like I know that they released some of the tracks on that too, of that demo, but yeah, I think the demo in Exhumed is kind of like my favorite part of the band. Like, that's when they've sort of, and this is just like that Vengeance episode, Human Sacrifice is my favorite, and they slowly kind of change for me, but like, I'm the same way with this band. I think Exhumed is like definitely their strongest. Even with the longest songs, it's their strongest for me.
Well, that's the general criticism of doom metal, is what are they doing exactly? Oh, they're creating an atmosphere. Okay, I got you. They're creating an atmosphere by playing very slowly. On one hand, a person might argue and say that it's boring because they're not doing anything. Well, that same person, on the other hand, would say that Between the Buried and Me is doing too much on Swim to the Moon. So which do you want? Do you want a 17-minute song of very slow, intense heaviness that you are forced to pay attention to? Or do you want 17 minutes of speed and technicality that you can't even keep up with? Right.
Like, I would think you'd probably appreciate Paramaecium a lot more if you really appreciate that folklore side of it, because the there's so much of that in the music that if you come from it from the approach of I really love the operatic vocals and the like harpsichords and all the all the different cleaner stuff that they bring into it, if that's like more of what attracts you to this band, but you happen to be a metal fan, you'll be more rewarded, because when they really hit those metal moments, you're just like, wow, this is intense. Whereas I'm coming from the side of like, I want them to just be heavy, and I love that whole like mellow side for sure. I mean, like I love a lot of those kind of neo-folky kind of like gothy kind of. That's a huge part of the music I love, but I don't normally hear it mixed together with the death growls and stuff, and so like it's confusing for me, because it's like sometimes when I'm listening to Paramaecium, I'm like, just want to hear it just be sludgy and doomy and like these power riffs, and then they'll get really clean. And I don't know if it's Andrew that is the male singer that sings clean, but it just, when he starts singing clean, I'm just like, ugh.
Well, we're beating around the bush, but yeah, let's talk about Within the Ancient Forest.
Yeah, let's get to that one, man, for sure.
Well, before we talk about Within the Ancient Forest, I'm going to take this time to say thank you to everyone for listening to this podcast. Thank you for listening and for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We are on Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, so if you have an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the latest episode of the Discography Discussion podcast, and it will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out. It lets us know you're listening. And now Dan is going to tell us all about 5-star reviews.
We're really into reviews on Discography Discussion. We just want to know what you guys want. Let us know. You can leave us reviews on Apple Podcasts. You can leave us reviews on Stitcher. You can leave us reviews really anywhere where you can hear this podcast. But most recently, you can actually leave us reviews directly on Facebook. If you go to www.facebook.com/discography discussion, you can leave us a review either in stars, or you can leave an actual written review, or both. And that's just one of those things that lets us know that you're listening, and lets us know how you feel about what direction we're going in. And if you have any suggestions, definitely reach out to us. I know a lot of people have been reaching out to us lately.
And now Steven is going to tell us all about Unteachers.
Unteachers at bandcamp.com. We are the closest thing to doom metal in. No, we're really far from doom metal. We are the Paramaecium of today.
Oh man!
No.
Oh wow! That's
tall order.
No, I'm kidding. I'm very much kidding.
There's a lot of mud on those shoes, Steven.
Yeah, the next record maybe will be closer to that, but not the one that's out now. Yeah, I don't know how to promote myself. Sorry.
It's all good.
One of the new developments in 2018 is we did become members of the Amazon Affiliates program. So we will be posting links to all the music we talk about in the show notes below. So if you're wanting to purchase any of the music or any of the albums that we talk about, just follow those links. It will take you directly to them. It does not change the cost for you, and we do get some kickback from that, and we appreciate that support. We'll talk about our Patreon subscribers at the end of the episode, Dan, but we did get some feedback on episode 55, Judas Priest with James Rolfe.
Oh, yeah.
We had a YouTube comment from Falco. Amazing job. Really loving this podcast. I gotta say, there are some bands that I can suggest. I mean, Budgie. I mean, Heavy Load. Wow, he's going old school.
Yeah, he is.
Maybe some Manowar, and maybe Moss from Switzerland. And talking about the podcast, more than listenable. Thanks for discussing bands like Living Sacrifice or Circle of Dust.
Cool. Well, thank you, Falco. We really appreciate you defending the Lilat system from the evil Andros in the Star Fox video games. But in all seriousness, thank you for listening, and we'll definitely take those suggestions. Every time you guys give us a suggestion, we will definitely put that on the master list. Don't know if we're going to get to it right away. We've got literally an infinite amount of bands to talk about, but if you give us a suggestion, we will do our best to try to get to it.
Another YouTube comment from Matthew G. British Steel mixed with Defenders of the Faith. Rise to Ruins, so apt for this band, and so good.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm still stuck on Firepower to this day.
AC tweeted at us, when I first got the notification for this episode, I thought, did these fools seriously listen to and discuss every Judas Priest album? Still haven't gotten around to listening to Firepower. The way you guys describe it, I probably should do that soon.
Shame on you, man.
Absolutely, AC, you should. And I'm going to ask you about it at some point if you listen to it. So be prepared to answer. And thanks for listening to the show, man. We really appreciate hearing from you.
Did you catch the new Judas Priest, Steven?
I haven't heard it personally, but I've heard about it, and I heard it's pretty good. But I'm kind of weird. Like, I only heard it. I'm only a fan of like the early stuff. I haven't really followed them like all the way through. So like, I'm kind of like I need to be schooled a little bit.
Well, you can go back and listen to our Judas Priest episode then.
Well, I definitely intend to. Is there a new record? What do you think of their new record?
I love it, man. It's aggressive as hell. There's a lot of modern elements thrown in there, but not like in the bad way. It still sounds like Judas Priest. To me, it's kind of like the same modernization of the band that we had with Painkiller back in the day, you know, where they're like, okay, we're gonna step up from this like 80s glam thing and become like, you know, like a serious heavy metal band again and redefine it for a new generation. And I think Firepower does that.
That's the new record, Firepower?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll definitely check it out. I'm curious because I just kind of like got out of that whole thing. Like, you know, when I think of Judas Priest, I'm more of a fan of the older stuff. I never followed them the whole way through. But I always love when a band from that era puts out something awesome. Like Iron Maiden still, you know, they're still kicking too, and his voice sounds pretty good still after all these years. So
stay tuned for that.
That's another epic one for you guys.
Yeah, Travis needs to put on a pot of coffee before we do that one.
Is he going to be on it?
Yeah,
he's kind of like the guy you should have on that, I think.
Within the Ancient Forest.
Oh man.
Yeah.
This is almost neo-folk. It's very folky. It's very melodic, and we are singing old songs that were sang to us by our grandfathers around a campfire. I feel like I'm doing a preview of the Opeth episode as I speak.
Maybe, yeah.
This is the album that, in my impression of Paramaecium, that this is the one everyone goes to. That, like, I mean, I guess Exhumed might be that way too, but I don't know. I feel like Within the Ancient Forest is kind of like, this is where the band got two guitarists, and like Jason Sherlock has now been in the band for a little while, and I don't know. Am I wrong in thinking that this is the one? Like, this is kind of everyone's favorite, or is it Exhumed for most people?
I mean, in my experience, I think a lot of people lean towards Exhumed.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like the hardcore metalheads, yeah. Like, and it's weird too because like we always joke on the show about me being a closet meathead. So like logically, it would seem like that Exhumed would be my favorite, you know. And I do like Exhumed, and you know, it's kind of a trope of mine. But like, I mean, I probably like Within the Ancient Forest 5% more than I like Exhumed. If that makes sense.
See,
like,
this record just, like, everyone that I talk to that is a fan of this band loves this album, but for some reason I can't really get into it. I think it's because the songs are shorter, and by shorter I mean 8 or 9 minutes, not 17. But I mean, I think a 9-minute song's still a long song.
Absolutely.
But there's so much to love about it. For one, I love the idea that Andrew had written a novel, some sort of a fantasy novel. I have never read the novel, which is of the same title, by the way.
Well, that's your problem. You didn't read the book.
Did you?
No, God no.
I didn't think so.
Hell no, I didn't read the book.
Anyone who's even owned that book, or let alone read it. And I'd love to track a copy down. I don't know if they ever pressed a bunch of it or what, but it would be cool to read it and to kind of see, you know, how it all connects to the album. But to me, it was just like an album that came out with a title like that. I had no reference to the story at all. I know that's supposed to be connected, but I do love. I love everything about it in terms of the title and the artwork and the idea of putting harpsichords and mixing all this, like, you know, the operatic stuff. I love all those ideas. It's just something about the album to me, this is my album where I kind of lose track of like I kind of like phase out. My ADD just kicks into gear hardcore on this one for me. And I don't know why. And I know there's great things about it, but I get bored.
How can you have ADD and like Exhumed of the Earth? Anyway, so the
What?
Yeah, doesn't make sense, man. Your story's falling
This
apart.
is like-
Neither did that fucking joke.
This is like the heart of anything you talk. Paramaecium as a discussion is always going to keep coming back to which album bored you.
Right.
You know?
Well, we'll get to that one, but like
I know.
within the Ancient Forest, I like because you've still got the same level of heaviness that you'd had on Exhumed. This is very much for all intents and purposes, the same band. And like what I liked about Exhumed, I was saying how I liked the last song, "Removed from the Grave," and like because that song has like a flute in it and like starts off melodically and everything, and like it leads into Within the Ancient Forest really well because this is a record that has those doom metal riffs. It has that heaviness. I mean, when the band comes in full force on Within the Ancient Forest, it is still ball-bustingly heavy doom metal. And there's no you can't really say that it's not. Yes, it has all those different elements in it, and that's what I liked about it. At the core of it, that you had 8 or 9 minute songs with so many different elements to them. So I'm not getting a Voyage of the Severed anymore or a Hemorrhage of Hatred where it's just the same thing for 10 minutes. Now you've got 9 minutes, but there's melodic sections in there. There's more. I feel like there's more thought put into the songwriting.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The songs on Exhumed of the Earth are really long. The songs on this album are not as long, but
by a
somehow
few seconds.
They make them feel as long as the first album's songs. So if you take a 9 minute song and it feels like it's 17 minutes, what does that say about the song?
Well, I don't think any of these songs sound like 17 minutes. I think
Maybe not literally 17. I'm comparing to the first album because 17 minutes is the worst case scenario. You know,
one of the biggest. Yeah, well, one of the biggest things with this record is that it definitely has a different tone to it. You know, this isn't.
Joe, you're a production guy, right?
I like to consider myself the emperor of all things audio.
What do you think of the production on this record compared to Exhumed?
It sounds like an album recorded in 1996 that was very intentionally made to sound better and atmospheric. You know, I mentioned neo-folk earlier. It very much sounds like somebody said, I want my metal album to sound like what I feel when I'm watching The Interview with the Vampire or when I'm reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I want it to sound like the 1600s.
I think I get that.
I'm calling bullshit.
I get what he means by that, but I guess what I'm asking is, like, there was something crushing about the heaviness of the... And Exhumed, by the way, I didn't think Exhumed was a great produced album. There was issues with that production, but it was at least really heavy. But with this one, I feel like the heaviness, the production of it doesn't really bring that heaviness out like it could have.
Well, if you have a badass sound system at home like I do, no. That's like every record label's excuse for if a record sounds like shit.
Yeah, I listened to all these albums out of my laptop speakers.
See, I'm
kidding.
That's kind of funny though, because if you did like just in the car or whatever, I actually did. Normally, I only use my sound system for vinyl, but unfortunately, I don't have vinyl copies of this record. So, come on, guys.
Well, if you play any CDs out of like a same setup as like if you have like the old stereo speakers and a stereo receiver, it's gonna sound awesome.
It did. And so I didn't like. Actually, the funny thing about Exhumed is that Exhumed was so fucking bass heavy that like I had to turn the bass down on my system because it was like it's sounding really bad. Like the vibrations were like really noticeable. So I had to scale those back on Exhumed, and then I'd turn it back up on Within the Ancient Forest. So I mean, I guess from that perspective, it sounds heavier. But like I hear when I hear this record, like when the band really kicks in full force, Now, I feel like it's just as heavy as it ever had been, but at the same time, you know, these songs weren't written with heaviness in mind necessarily. Like, there are heavy parts, but it's not the focus. Whereas on Exhumed, it was the focus, and here it's like the heavy parts are there simply to contrast the more melodic elements.
Yeah,
and the playing is different in the sense that, like, it's I wouldn't say it's like gothic metal. Like, I don't think that these first two records really hit that gothic metal thing, which is why I threw out the bullshit comment on the Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and the 1600s and stuff interview with the vampire, because I don't hear that. Like, I definitely
knew what he
hear,
meant by that, though.
No, I get it.
I mean, we all have different names for what we're referencing, but what we're referencing is the gothic kind of overtones of the album, and I would say this is probably them at their peak. Ironically, as I can say it, that it kind of bores me in some areas, and that there's songs where I find like it loses my attention. I do think that it's at their strongest point as a band, because it sounds like they've been playing together, and it's tight, and it's probably their most ambitious album, their whole discography.
Yeah, and I know that, like, it's obviously opinion is subjective, enjoyability is subjective to, each of us as individuals. But I do feel like in a kind of a factual sense that the songwriting on Within the Ancient Forest is better than the songwriting on Exhumed. Regardless of how I feel about Exhumed, I have to admit that the songwriting had a lot more thought put into it on Within the Ancient Forest, and a lot more thought went into the tone. And the tone is medieval to me. It's medieval, pre-Renaissance.
Totally medieval. That's a great reference, and I agree with you. This is so random to point this out, but it's like when people talk about like Weezer, and they go like, well, what's the best Weezer album? Like, some people go like, well, I love the Blue Album. And other people are like, I love Pinkerton. And it's like,
Pinkerton
I'm the guy
is the
who
factually
says,
correct answer.
I think, what's that?
I said Pinkerton is the factually correct answer.
No, and I was just going to say, I think Pinkerton is, songwriting-wise, the best thing they've written, but I still think Blue is my favorite.
Sure.
And you can have a favorite, and you can acknowledge a favorite and a best of as two separate albums.
Absolutely.
And so with Pure, completely, I know we just talked about Weezer in a Paramaecium conversation, that's totally random, but my point is I think this is their best record in terms of songwriting, but I think that because I'm looking for the doomier, heavier, like sludgier stuff, that Exhumed is clearly going to be the record for me. And because I find that the riffs and the kind of musical style that they went with that, and maybe because it's not quite as ambitious, and so therefore it becomes more of the stripped down and it's more about the riff toughness, I found Exhumed to be my Ancient Forest. You know what I mean? But I get what you mean. Like I said, it's definitely their most ambitious. It's definitely their most musically diverse, and it's like they got a freaking harpsichord, for crying out loud. That's pretty intense.
Hell yeah!
I think that's pretty rare to find in metal. No, I agree with you, but I just find that, like, in an enjoyment factor, this is like, going back to that Weezer reference, like the Blue Album is like my favorite, and Exhumed is kind of like my Blue Album.
I gotcha.
You know what I mean?
It's my Green Album because it had, like, the disc I have for Exhumed is like the CD is solid green.
Green.
It's really weird.
That's funny, green Album reference.
Well, and my copy of Exhumed is independently released, as far as I can tell, because it doesn't.
Man, you're sitting on a gold mine, I think.
I probably am. I'm probably sitting on like $500 or something. But like,
but don't sell it.
I would never sell it. I would never sell it. But like, I would love a vinyl re-release, Andrew, if you're listening.
I would love it if they could put some.
I'd love all of it, man.
Great.
I'd love it all on wax. But anyway,
I don't know about all of it, but we'll get there.
Well, okay. So let's talk about the last thing I'll say on this record is Andrew's singing. He sings on this record. He doesn't just growl the whole time, and that's interesting to me. That he was able to pull that off, because I don't really remember hearing it in Exhumed, and it was really interesting to me to hear that dynamic from the band. and it's something that they would explore further later on. But what did you think of Andrew's singing on Within the Ancient Forest?
I've never been a fan of any of his singing, but I would say that Within the Ancient Forest, because it's a tighter band and it's kind of at their where they've been playing for a little bit, as with the lineup that was on the last one, from what I'm understanding, I think that it doesn't come off as bad. I mean, we can agree he's not a great singer. He's just kind of almost talking his way through.
He's not amazing, yeah, but
and I get that the style it's fitting for what the kind of darkness vibe that they're bringing to this, and again that neo-folk kind of vibe. But I mean, I think he's the least out of key on this album.
Yeah, so that's a really good segue into A Time to Mourn.
1999, A Time to Mourn.
This one's only 40 minutes, because what the hell?
I love that about it. That's one of my favorite parts about it.
You like that it's brief?
I'll be honest with you, whether you are a power violence kind of band and you have like 30-second songs and you have 50 of them on your album, or if you have 4 songs, I don't want your album to be longer than 40 minutes.
Yeah, I feel you.
Because I lose my attention at 40 minutes, no matter how awesome you are. You know what I mean?
So, let's be honest. This is not the same band that put out Within the Ancient Forest.
No, this is a complete departure lineup-wise.
This is Andrew Tompkins and Friends.
Well, Ian Arkley, is that how you say
Ian
it?
Arkley from Seventh Angel, yep, and Action Mortality.
Seventh Angel's a pretty cool band, so
absolutely.
I'll give it that. I mean, there's a despite the lineup change, I'm really disappointed that Jason Sherlock's not on this.
Yeah, you can tell too.
You can tell, definitely. The tones on this one seem kind of more like a stoner rock production, less of a metal production.
Ian Arkley, he's kind of like a superstar in the Christian Doom scene. Is there a Christian Doom scene?
I don't think there really is.
I don't think there is, but like, so, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Seventh Angel. Like, I mean, I still listen to The Torment every now and again, and I love it.
Great record.
Yeah, it is. And so the thing is though, like with Ian Arkley, is that he also did a Doom project called Ashen Mortality a few years later, and it was not all that different from Paramaecium in the sense that it was, slow, doomy metal with operatic female vocals and stuff. And I actually really like those Ashen Mortality records. However, Ian Arkley's version of doom metal tends to lean more towards the gothic side and more kind of the dramatic. And that is heavily apparent on A Time to Mourn. His tone is, because I said I didn't hear gothic.
That's the big difference on this record, is it lost its like medieval vibe.
Right.
It's Paramaecium has now ventured into the era of the doom that I'm familiar with, which is, like I said, going into the Neurosis and the Warlords and the the more modern, very well into the 90s. In fact, the very end of the 90s at this point. Kind of production. I bought this album at Cornerstone when it came at Cornerstone '99. I bought this album at the merch booth, and it was are you guys familiar with World Against World, the band that was out there?
I feel like I know the name, but not.
Well, they were a punk band called Spud Gun.
Okay.
And then they became World Against World, and then they became Orcrist, which was like a black metal band. But anyway, they were kind of like known in the scene with like the signed bands that would play Cornerstone and stuff. Anyway, we hung out with them. They were kind of the gothy, crust metal, doomy metal band of the time. Them and Warlord, and we were all hanging out. And I had just bought this album. We were jamming it and kind of all digging it at the time. And I remember we were all. Our consensus view was that it reminded us of like less of a medieval Paramaecium and more of I'm definitely not saying a hardcore doom, but definitely more of a modern 90s, less of a metal, more of a rock version. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, because these songs have choruses, believe it or not.
Yeah, and like literally like stoner rock riffs.
Yeah, listen to I'm Not to Blame.
Nice.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah, it's like this is my second favorite album from them.
Interesting.
I know that's probably weird.
You guys over Forest?
I find that the songs, and I think a lot of this, again, is the production. I think this is still heavier sounding to me than that other one.
That's it, Joe. Shut off the Skype. It's over. No. No.
I mean, I'm not to blame. I love the first song, A Moment. I think just the musical arrangement of it. And, Live for the Day is a really good one.
Those are my two favorites. I'm Not to Blame and Live for the Day are my favorite songs on this record.
And this is not a great... You know what? Honestly, I would say Ancient Forest songwriting-wise is way better. I mean, for sure. But I just, like, again, when you put on a record, you push play, and you just want to, like, listen to something. This one has a tone to it that is interesting to me. I'm just a fan of, like, again, the down tempo, sludgy kind of like down tune kind of tone of a guitar. Like, this one has more of that for me. It's not as crushing metal sounding as the Exhumed stuff, but I found the production worked for the guitar vibe better on this one for me.
Well, I think you could enjoy this record for the same reason that a Zao fan likes Parade of Chaos. It's not that it sounds extremely metal, but there's something about it that is listenable. And I think for the casual fan of the more extreme metal, who probably doesn't like doom metal for the sake of being doomy, could listen to this and find something less extreme to enjoy. But if you're a fan of Paramaecium and you're in on the last two records, I could see you having the same reaction to buying this as Dan had to buying Risk.
Fuck you.
What the fuck is this? The music is still kind of there. There's still like the medieval vocals and the like that folky kind of gothy thing. It's still the female operatic vocals. It's still there. I think the production changes it a little bit and makes it sound. The combination of the production and the fact that this is where we start to wane. Doesn't sound like the band. This sounds like you said, the Andrew and Company version, and the drum risen is good in my opinion. It starts to wane a little bit as far as a band, but I think this is one of those examples of when it's great, and when it's not, it's not. It's just, the production is what I think makes it sound the most different. That and the band lineup changes.
I don't think that it's like the songs necessarily that bother me. There's one thing that ruins this record for me: the singing.
Yeah, and that was like we were getting to that with the out of tune singing a little bit.
Yeah, it's not a little out of tune.
I get what they were going with. The idea of like, I'm the growling guy who, when I break from it, it's kind of like the moody kind of clean vocal thing. It's very moody, and I get what he's going for, and it's not supposed to be like, oh, I'm singing great. It's supposed to be moody and in line with the doom kind of thing. But when it's out of tune, it's just hard to listen to.
It sounds cheesy in a lot of places, like he's trying to sound more I don't know, like he's trying to sound more doom than he really is. It's that gothic thing that I don't like about it, really, is this idea of just like, there's parts where he's just like, it's just, there's a song called Betray. Yeah, there's a song called,
it's just like, dude, like, you know what I mean? Like open your lips a little more.
Betrayed Again. That song is an automatic skip for me every single time. He comes in, I've been betrayed again. I was like, fuck it. I'll skip right past it because I'm not willing to listen to that for 5 minutes or 6 minutes or whatever. And the weird thing about me too is that he had Ian Arkley, who's a really good doom metal singer. So I'm surprised that like Ian didn't do some of the singing parts. Like, you've got all the tools you need to succeed, man. Like, but I also understand, being an asshole lead singer, that it's my job to do the singing. Like, I get that part of it.
You actually just hit on why I don't like doom metal. it sounds moody and fucking boring. It sounds like the band had to show up and practice, and nobody wants to be there. So we're just gonna sludge fucking through it. And all right, Dan, were you gonna sing the lyrics here? Yeah, sure, man.
I don't know, maybe.
It's like,
Well, do you like Neurosis?
Oh yeah, I like Neurosis.
Like I feel like Neurosis mellowed out a lot in that sort of like during the aughts, I guess is how you say.
Yeah.
But like, you know, Through Silver and Blood was like a wall of doom and sludge and like just tribal chaos or whatever. And then like they kind of phased out and they started doing the same kind of thing as this, where they're like singing the same way. And I think Neurosis was produced way better and performed way better. But I mean, they had this sort of like droning, like where are these songs going kind of a vibe that kind of lost my attention. Or maybe people, you almost feel like I don't get this because people think this is amazing, but I'm just not connecting to it. I just think Through Silver and Blood is way better than this. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how I think about with this stuff. It's like, you know, I get what they're trying to do with that clean vocal and that like droning kind of like slow or whatever, but like without the heaviness for me, I can kind of like zone out of that completely. You know what I mean?
You're welcome for the track skip, by the way, Dan.
Yeah, the song Betrayed Again came on like right after I got done saying what I was saying, and Joe immediately skipped it for me.
In this recent revisit, I hadn't listened to Paramaecium at all for a couple years, at least. I mean, maybe Exhumed fit in there a little bit, but I definitely didn't do their whole discography. And in fact, Echoes from the Ground isn't even a record that was on my radar at all, because I mean, I just didn't. I don't know why. I never owned it. I never really got into it. But going back for this conversation, you know, and freshening up on my hearing the albums again, I kind of heard them in a new light. And Time to Mourn was one of the albums after Exhumed that I skipped the least. I just kind of like let it wash over me and found it to be. I think some of what helps that is that it's not as long, and it's just, you know, it kind of gets in and gets out, and it doesn't overstay its welcome too much. Whereas some of the other albums kind of felt like they were just really long, you know? And
yeah.
Well, why don't you guys go ahead and tell me about Echoes from the Ground, because I don't have it. It's not on streaming. I haven't heard it.
Echoes from the Ground, in my opinion, and I don't mean to be super disrespectful to this band, is absolute shit, to be completely honest with you.
All right, we're gonna go back to Exhumed of the Earth for this one.
Well, yeah.
I mean, if you compare those two records, if you just skip the two in the middle and go like beginning and end, like the bookends of their discography, it's night and day. Honest to God, it's just like, what is going on here? What is this? This band, they sound like a high school band trying to do a doom metal album. This album. Cool
lyrical concept behind this record. And that's the only good thing I have to say about it.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't.
What the heck, man? Like, first of all, it's literally sloppy. Like they're not even playing tight on the album. Like you can hear the drums and the guitars completely playing in different times. Like
out
almost
of sync,
like it's out of sync. The production is awful. There's nothing heavy about it. When it finally does break into a few heavy moments, you're like, oh yeah. Like,
totally independent release.
Thank you for doing this, finally.
So do you guys remember what I said earlier about nobody wanted to be at band practice? Yeah. The sound guy doesn't want to be here either.
Again, though, this isn't even the same Paramaecium that was on A Time to Mourn. This is still just Andrew and company, and even the vocals I don't think were as good as they were, you know.
Oh no, they're the worst. They're the most out of key on this. I didn't notice the out of key is bad on Time to Mourn. I know that it's there, but it didn't like hit me over the head like a frying pan.
Yeah.
Whereas this one was like offensively out of key, like to the point where I was like this is bad. Like why would they put this out like this? Like they've been so good. Why would they do this? This is the released upon the earth of their discography for sure.
This is not great, and like that was the most disappointing thing for me, because this record took me actually a little while to track down, and because I had gotten like I said, I got Exhumed for $4, and then I found, like, I was at a local place in St. Louis that sells used CDs, and I bought all kinds of amazing Christian metal in their hodgepodge section for like $1 each. Mm-hmm. And so I got like Within the Ancient Forest for $1. I got A Time to Mourn for $1. I got all this stuff. Man. And the cool thing about it was that like I got a lot of other really cool stuff too, but like, for those records being as good as they were, to get them for so cheap was amazing. But like, I think I actually ordered Echoes from the Ground, like either from the band directly, or it was from like Nordic Mission or something. So like, I paid like $15 for the record, and then like another like at least 15 or 20 for the shipping. Yeah, so for all the money I saved on their previous discography, I really got screwed in that deal.
It just feels like an incomplete album. There's 7 tracks, and this is probably the shortest album for a full length. I mean, this doesn't count EPs and demos. This is their shortest full length, but it feels to me the longest one to get through.
Well, it's not interesting. Like, you hear a lot of, like, he does a lot of talking, like he's reading a script or something through it. And, like, again, the lyrical concept is kind of cool, but, like, the execution of it is not great. And, like,
I don't remember. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And, like, they're not tight on this one, and like even in the parts of the record where they try to go old school Paramaecium and play like a kind of a doomy blunt kind of thing, it's usually performed sloppily, and it doesn't
just weak. It doesn't have the heaviness of that.
There's no
stuff.
interest in it. Like I hear it, I hear the songs, and they just fly by me like a crumbled up piece of paper. Like it's just there's nothing with it that sticks to me.
I don't remember if it was the first track or the second track. Somewhere within the first 3 tracks, I think it was the second track, Over the Sea. I could be wrong, but there was a song on there that literally droned on and on and on, and it did nothing but the same riff the entire time.
Right.
Like, to the point where I was like, this is going nowhere. This is literally just this. It's like on repeat mode. It's doing absolutely nothing. This is where I go back to, okay, you have a 17-minute track on Exhumed. That song, if you're just letting it wash over you and you're just kind of like, it's just playing and you're walking around sweeping the floor of your house or whatever, you'd be like, wait a minute, this is the same song? I thought this kind of was moving on to like, I thought the songs were just connecting, and they were doing like, this was like 3 songs in. With this song, it was like, oh my God, when are you going to stop playing this riff over and over again? And I feel like it's just been like a half an hour.
Skip
and you
it.
Look and you're like, and it's like 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Is this another example of a album that got a pass because of what it is or who it is?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I know nothing about it in terms of its success or how many people even knew about it. I know that the band, here's the crazy thing. The band, like Jason Sherlock came back right after this.
Yeah.
Because they did like a short reunion, or I don't know what you would call it, where they promoted the band, and before the band became in Exordium or whatever, they actually got Sherlock back, and I can't imagine Sherlock wanting to play this.
Well, and I think the fact that this isn't available anywhere.
It's not a very well known.
You can pull up on Apple Music or Google Play or whatever streaming service you use, and you can get Exhumed to the Earth. You can get Within the Ancient Forest. You can get A Time to Mourn. You can even get the Repentance EP. But there's no mention of this album.
Yeah,
so it's like they had to have been self-aware of that to an extent.
Yeah, it's 2004 too when it came out. It's a very weird time for them. It's like I don't even know if people were paying any attention at that point. Like They're not they stayed in Australia. There's a big thing there. I mean, I had the pleasure of interviewing Jason Sherlock, and the one thing that he said to me that shocked me was that he said, I never left Australia. And I thought, man, you've been on these legendary albums and you never freaking left Australia.
Yeah.
I would have thought he had toured around all over, maybe, especially North America. I thought he would have gotten here at least once. He's never left Australia. This band is purely an Australian band. So, I mean, I think that the combination of not being on a label like REX and not having, a consistent band that's working throughout the 10, 12 years, I think there was a lot of hiatuses and breakups between. This is like they just got together 2004, another one of them hired gun deals where it's like, okay, I'm going to do a record with some guys here I have, and it just really, this is where it really, to me, is like the combination of I may say like, well, the songwriting is great on Ancient Forest, but the production for me really was waning, or whatever you want to say about those other ones. This one, all of the things that I don't like are all at the same time. Like it's bad songs, it's bad production. The songs are too long, and yet they're the shortest songs.
Right.
That's bad. For a doom metal band, that's really bad. If your doom metal song is 6 minutes long, but I just thought I listened to it for 15 minutes, you got a problem. And this is terrible for me, honestly.
We agreed on something. Oh my gosh.
I'll be honest with you, I couldn't even get through it all.
Oh yeah, I mean I've listened to it a bunch of times because purchase justification. And
really, I got to listen to $15 worth of this.
there's got to be something good, right? But no, I gave up on it, and a lot of it's weird too because whenever we first started discography, like the idea of doing an episode on Paramaecium, I kind of almost forgot about that one because I was like, it's only 3 records. It should be a real short episode, Like I was thinking all that, and what's funny too is we talked about Exhumed for so long before we did the actual intro to the show that what I think is funny about that is that there's this old set of rules on this website called Metal Hammer. It was like the 196 rules of doom metal, and one of the rules was never let the listener know if it's an intro until you absolutely have to. So we're following the rules of doom metal with this episode, which I think is hilarious.
That is awesome.
So, what would be your final thoughts on Paramaecium, Stephen?
My final thoughts are that with every Paramaecium album, I feel like there's something that they're like getting close at, but they're never fully realized for either a production issue or a songwriting issue, or mixing a gothic vocal with a heavy song, or what I mean. There's I kind of wish that the band would just get back together, write 40 minutes of music, whether that's 2 songs or that's 12 songs, I don't care. Write 40 minutes of music and then get a producer to really get that heaviness out of you and take what's strong about those albums and just do a good album where they're like, you know what, we're stepping back, we're looking at our discography and we've never really nailed it fully, and now we're going to. That would be what I wish would happen. And the songs have their potential. They just overstay their welcome a lot. The albums feel too long in some areas. I guess that's it. I mean, the idea of Paramaecium is a lot better than the end result, I think. And if I were to recommend anything about them, I would say Exhumed of the Earth for sure, and their demo or the Repentance EP, because you can hear those early songs. That's really the Paramaecium that I like, is that era for sure.
Dan, what about you?
I like Paramaecium because they were kind of what got me into like this death doom metal type music, and that these kids listen to these days. And I really enjoyed what I heard on Exhumed, I enjoyed what I heard on Forest. Wavered a little bit on A Time to Mourn for me, but not enough for me to like hate the band or think that they sucked or that they sold out or whatever. You know, like it wasn't anything like that. I just preferred the sound of the first two records. And in my mind, the fourth record doesn't exist, so that's easy for me to get past.
Except that we're on record talking about it.
Well, yeah, but I only have to do that once, right? Then it's recorded forever. I don't
Unless Joe cuts it out.
I don't ever have to talk about it again. Yeah. So
yeah, you know, the other thing I would add real quick is I wish Andrew Tompkins would have sang for Mortification.
Oh, yeah, no shit.
For at least after Scrolls.
For Blood World On, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought Steve was pretty good on PMA, but it did start getting weird on that one.
Well, he started doing the clean vocals, and he was trying to make it sound more live than the layered, like Scrolls was like super layered. But
Yeah.
like Andrew Tompkins, he's really good at making it sound layered with like one vocal.
Yeah, he's extreme.
He has a freaking awesome death metal vocal. One of the best, I think.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be understated with the fact that we can criticize the music and stuff. And I get that he was doing something a little bit more musical than just straight heavy, but the dude's vocals, I would love to hear him on a balls to the walls, heavy, sludgy doom record. It would just be fantastic.
Exhumed. Sorry, no,
but I mean, but like
a new
10
one, yeah.
Judicials in a row.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. You just want to hear him play death metal. I get it.
Yeah.
But Joe, do you have a final thought on Paramaecium?
I am not a fan of doom metal. I will listen to it for a laugh, but if you want me to sit here and tell you that I think Paramaecium is the greatest band in the world, I just can't do it. I have to be honest with myself as well as you, the listener, and my co-hosts. So I will say this. For the metal fan who wants to hear something different, if you're a fan of Doom, you could pick up any of the first 3 releases of this band, and you will be entertained. For the non-Doom fan, pick up Within the Ancient Forest. You will be entertained, if only for the neo... What word did I say earlier?
Folk,
Folky.
medieval.
It's like
if
bullshit.
only for the neo-folk entertainment value, because I've listened to Doom, and I know Doom's thing is about atmosphere, and Within the Ancient Forest gives you a very interesting atmosphere.
And if you're looking for the neo-folk thing with Christian music, and that's a really rare genre, I would say the Revolutionary Army of the Infant Jesus is something you want to track down, for sure.
Whew.
Would that be your album of the week?
That's a mouthful.
I'm not listening to it this week, but I'll definitely use that as my album of the week. I mean, shout out to that band for sure. They're really awesome.
Can you
I know
say
in
the
that
name
sort
of
of-
it one more time? Because that was a lot.
The Revolutionary Army of the Infant Jesus.
Wow.
They're kind of hard to track down, but there's been some reissues lately of their albums. They're from the 80s, but they're like that gothy neo-folk weird sort of like thing that doesn't even sound like it would ever be Christian, but it is.
Interesting.
And but they don't have like a metal tone to them at all. I'm just saying, if you're into that side of it, if you're looking for that side of it, Paramaecium isn't really enough of either.
Well, our
Like
buddy,
they're not enough of the full metal or the neo folk. They're kind of like a mix.
my buddy Mike, who might be on an episode coming up soon, would really be into that.
What's your album of the week, Dan?
Oh, my album of the week. Ooh.
Without looking at your phone.
I'm not. My phone's on the floor. I just threw it on the floor. There you go. My album of the week is Still Life by Opeth. I'm supposed to listen to all the records, but that's the one I keep getting stuck on.
For me, it's Genghis Tron, Board Up the House.
Oh, that's a good
Wow.
one.
That's a name I haven't heard in a while.
One of my coworkers swears, talking about albums that live on your top 10 and will always stand on their own, swears by Genghis Tron. And I listened to it a couple times.
Yeah, that's a band I couldn't tell you like what I think of them. It's been so long, but that's a name that from the past for me.
They haven't done anything new recently, so I mean, they're still.
They've
Yeah,
never
that's
done
old
anything
school.
other than that one thing.
They only have
Yeah.
that one record, so.
They have that industrial thing going on where they have one record and then 5 remix records, from
Right.
what I can find.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a band called Backworld too, by the way. That's also kind of in that sort of neo-folky, gothy Christian thing. I'm only name dropping because it's so rare that there's even these kind of bands at all that are in the Christian market. Backworld, though, there's an album called Holy Fire and another one called Come the Bells. Those two records are like if you took the death metal out of Paramaecium and you had like way more musically gothy kind of things, like it's sort of that stuff. So I don't know if you guys are interested in that stuff. I'm super into that side of it. Just dropping some names for your listeners there.
Perfect.
Very unmetal of me.
Well, if they're listening to this episode, then they are your listeners also,
There
Steven.
you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you guys had me back so soon from the Vengeance episode. It must have been the high ratings.
Absolutely, you know. I mean, I don't know about you, but I just bought a new car based on all the revenue from that episode. So, you know.
That's funny.
Me and Roger Martinez are best friends now, you know. No, like,
I am the tie that binds.
there you go. All right. Well, we want to thank everybody for downloading and listening to this podcast.
And on that note, this has been episode 57 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion, and please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks. Keep your eye on that page. If you are not one, we're getting ready to do something special for only $1. Steven Sarro and Unteachers can be found on Bandcamp and on Facebook. Be sure to pick up their new record. What's the name of that record, Steven?
A Human Comedy. It's been out for a few years, but it's probably new to everybody else but me.
The happiest man in the world.
Every disease has its cure.